Welcome back to the Party Killers Podcast. I'm your host, Walter.
And this is Jeff.
And today, or I guess tonight, one thing that we have to talk about is the Warren-Sanders feud. Do you know what's going on with this? You been following this at all?
Not entirely. Didn't he say that she couldn't win because she was, it is alleged that he said that she couldn't win the general because she's a woman. But I've heard that that is not true, that he actually never said that.
Yeah, well, it's all, like, allegedly. There's no actual evidence that Sanders said any of this. There's no recording, anything like that. What there is, there are, in fact, recordings of Sanders, essentially, like, you can look this up on YouTube. There's, like, videos of Bernie Sanders in, like the 1970s, like, telling little girls, like, don't let anyone ever tell you can't be president, you know? So this whole thing is bullshit. It was all just something like probably thought up by the Warren campaign to try to boost her over Bernie. And
I mean, truly, she has just taken his platform and run with it.
No, she is literally Hillary Clinton in a Bernie Sanders mask.
Yeah, exactly. And once she gets into the office, it would be another neo-lib.
Yeah, but so it gets better. So during the most recent Democrat debate, essentially you had the completely unbiased CNN moderator essentially ask Bernie, why did you say this to Elizabeth Warren or whatever? What did you think, like, when you told Elizabeth a woman can't be president? And Bernie essentially said, I didn't say that. That's ridiculous, you know? And then right after Bernie finishes essentially, like, denouncing this view, the questioner, or the moderator from CNN, turns right over, goes to Elizabeth Warren, and is like, Elizabeth, how did you feel when Bernie Sanders told you that you couldn't be president?
Well, what I've noticed with the Democratic debates, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that media companies are moderating them, every time that somebody starts to poll at the top of the pack, the moderators seemingly try to tear them down. Which, if you think about it from a capitalist perspective, the Trump presidency has been probably the best thing to happen to CNN, MSNBC,
100%,
public radio, what have you,
yeah.
any left-leaning media outlet, because they have something to talk about every single day. Whether that is, substantive or not, they have something to cover each and every day that they know they'll get viewers on, that they'll know that they'll be able to cover ad space on, which, it makes their job a lot easier, and it would make sense why they would try to tear down the Democrats.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like, the Trump campaign, all this was a giant boon to a lot of these media companies, and I would say that a lot of these media companies, such as, I guess, CNN, MSNBC, are essentially kind of on the verge of collapsing. They're on the verge of kind of being phased out by independent media sources. Because, I don't know about you, I don't know a single person my age who essentially gets news from CNN, MSNBC, or even Fox News. But yet, I know a ton of people that get news from, like, independent content creators, like, Philip DeFranco.
Yeah, on like, YouTube and other, like, online outlets. Yeah, of course. And I would even venture to say it's not just people our age. I mean, it's I would say anywhere from, the younger generation that's interested, you're 14, 15, 16, all the way up until like 25 to 30. I mean, because I have professors at school that are, 30 to 35, and, they'll make jokes about how you can't trust anything that goes on in the media. And, like, that, with the exception of, your 2 to 5% of, like, the older, 45 to 60 generation, like, I would say it's overwhelming the people who are younger that just do not trust the media, and for very good reason.
Okay, real quick, I want to circle back around to the Warren-Sanders feud because it gets better. So, essentially, after the debates, what happened was CNN caught on camera, or quote-unquote caught, because there's people who think the whole thing was staged. Essentially, Warren, like, Sanders walked up to Warren, or Warren walked up to Sanders, essentially, and Sanders reached out to try to get a handshake, and you could see essentially Warren was really upset and like was yelling at him, and essentially later on CNN released the audio, and essentially Warren walked up to Sanders, like called him a liar, and walked away, and like, you know, there's a lot of like speculation on this. Gonna put on the tinfoil hat there. You know, the mic just happened to be on. You know, the camera just happened to be panned to like right where they were. So some people are saying that essentially this like post-debate confrontation between Warren and Sanders was staged by Warren and CNN in an attempt to like make Bernie look bad.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, if you think about who... Well, I mean, there was a point in time where Warren was polling just below Joe Biden, and CNN did the same thing, trying to tear her down, trying to get her to say that she would tax the middle class in order to pay for health care.
Yeah, which she would, but she wouldn't admit it.
Yeah, exactly. And they kept circling back to it, trying to get her to say that she would do it, because they knew that it would hurt her her poll numbers, and it did.
Yeah. Well, one thing, this has not hurt Bernie's poll numbers.
Right.
It's actually hurt Warren's poll numbers.
But I think a lot of people, especially those who would vote for Bernie or Warren as she says she would act in the office, you know, they see through a lot of the media charades in regards to what's going on right now.
Okay. Yeah.
But the people like Joe Biden, you know, they're just looking for a D. The people that would vote for Joe Biden, they're just looking for a D that is establishment, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know, those are your 45 to 60s.
The people that would vote for Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that makes no sense to me.
I would describe Pete Buttigieg as, and I was talking about this with Donnie earlier, he is establishment corporate Democrat with millennial coat of paint.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, neoliberalism, but gay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's literally what's going on here. It's identity politics mixed with establishment politics.
Yeah.
And you would get nothing new out of him.
So, yeah, I would like to put the tinfoil hat on a bit here and go into a conspiracy theory that I don't necessarily believe, but I think does have a bit of merit, and I'd like to discuss it. So essentially, I think it was Donald Trump Jr. is essentially saying that this whole impeachment thing. Let's establish some facts here first. Impeachment does not benefit the Democrats. Would you agree with that?
Yes and no. I don't think it's bringing anybody over to their side, but I think that it's a good way to beat the drum leading up to 2020.
Okay.
For Democrats. I mean, anybody that sees through what impeachment is as, you know, just political gaming.
Yeah.
Understands that it's not going to go anywhere.
But my point is, the Democrats...
what I'm saying is there are a lot of people on the left who do think that Trump needs to be removed from
office.
office.
Of course. But, like, you're not going to pull support away from Trump.
Right, that's exactly what I'm saying, that they're not gaining any new voters.
So anyways, so the theory is that essentially impeachment, this whole impeachment thing, is just essentially a ploy to essentially disadvantage Democratic candidates that are like sitting congresspeople, such as Warren and Sanders.
Why do you say that?
Why? Because they have to sit through, like, if they're sitting through congressional Senate proceedings, they can't be campaigning.
Right,
they can't. They can't even talk about impeachment, you know, because they're supposed to be objective.
Or make a name for themselves in the House or the Senate by like supporting bills or bringing up bills or anything like that.
But,
yeah, that's a really good point.
Who isn't a sitting senator that's running for president?
Pete?
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden, yeah.
So, I mean, look, I'm not necessarily saying I buy into this, but there is this theory going around that essentially the only reason why impeachment is happening is it's just a ploy to boost, like, Biden above the other candidates. What do you think?
See, I am of the belief that the biggest threat to Joe Biden's campaign is Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And I would say, if they wanted him to have a fair chance at winning, they wouldn't let him campaign.
No.
Like, they would tell him...
They just do a Bloomberg.
You sit at home and you don't do anything and we'll take care of it. You know, we'll throw money at it until it works. he'll go out there and forget Obama's name.
Talk about like
forget what city he's in.
Talk about like little kids touching his legs or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
it's just he'll go and sexually assault some people in a hot dog restaurant.
Yeah.
He is the biggest detriment to his campaign, no doubt about it.
Man, and this is something. So Bernie supporters were calling out Biden on corruption, and
good.
Yeah, but Bernie Sanders essentially apologized.
But it's soft. Joe Biden's version of corruption, much like Trump's version of corruption, is soft corruption. It's all legal, which is the worst part about it. There's never been any, you do this for me, I'll do this for you transcript that's been released in regards to either of them. In regards to Trump in the Ukraine, or Biden and his son in the Ukraine, or Biden and his son in China. But it's very, if you have a brain, you can figure out what went on there.
Yeah.
You don't get the type of state contract that Joe Biden's son got in China for like $1 billion for
Ukraine,
a financial firm.
Yeah.
Without some sort of quid pro quo going on. And the fact that Joe Biden was vice president at the time and met with one of the high-ranking members of the CCP like a week before his son got that contract approved. You know what's going on, but there's no evidence. It's not illegal, but it's highly unethical.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily know the laws, so I'm gonna have to defer to you on that one. If you say it's not illegal, it's probably not.
Well, just like what happened with Trump in Ukraine, if it is how they say that it happened, it's not illegal. It's just highly unethical. I'm not certain on this, but I remember seeing something about how Ivanka got a lot of contracts in China post Trump being president, but it's the same thing. It's not illegal. It's just unethical. Now if they had a transcript of a phone call or the audio of a phone call where Trump says, I will take aircraft carriers out of the South China Sea if you give my daughter a $1 billion contract, that's illegal.
Or if you say, I'm going to withhold $1 billion in aid unless you fire this prosecutor investigating my son.
Right. That's illegal. But
but Biden did do that.
But that's hard to prove.
They have it on tape saying that. Like,
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, it's just literally a video of he's at like some kind of summit, and it's literally him, saying essentially, I told them, if you don't fire this prosecutor, you're not getting that aid. Like, literally, there's a video of him saying this. Anybody that's curious can look it up later. I'm sure it's on YouTube. But yeah, I don't know. On the whole Trump-Ukraine thing, this whole... have you watched any of the Senate trial? Are you familiar with anything?
No. Frankly, I'm keeping my head in the sand in regards to all that because I just think it's obfuscation. I don't think that any of that is going to make any impact on the 2020 campaign.
Yeah, well, essentially, the Trump campaign is arguing. Well, I mean, there's all the anti-impeachment arguments before, but they're essentially arguing that if you read the summary of their arguments, I don't know what the terminology is, but essentially they're saying, or they said something along the lines of, if it wasn't for politics, then literally the Senate would outright dismiss these charges because they're not charging Trump with any crimes. There's no high crimes or misdemeanors going on. The obstruction of Congress charge is, and I mean, I hate rehashing this. No, I'm not kidding. I love rehashing this. But yeah, the obstruction of Congress charge, the reason why the executive privileges are in place is to essentially to separate the powers, using executive privileges is not obstruction of Congress. And if they believed it was obstruction of Congress, there are legal methods to do that. They could have gone to the courts and say, hey, we want, but they didn't.
Well, Obama used executive privileges in 5 countries to wage illegal wars over the course of 8 years. So, you know, if you can get away with that, I think that you should probably be able to get away with quite a bit with executive privilege.
Well, here's another thing. The charge of abuse of power, essentially saying, it was abuse of power because the corruption Trump was investigating was the corruption of a political opponent. If you're going to set that precedent, that then you could easily say, oh, well, this whole Russia investigation that actually has been like defunct, that was in fact like based on these fraudulent FISA warrants. You could say it like if what Trump did was abuse of power, then this Russia investigation, which is an investigation like into a political opponent, you could definitely say that's abuse of power. I just think the Democrats don't know the kind of like precedent they're setting here,
No, I 100% agree. And I don't remember his name, but he is a sitting House Democrat. And he basically said, I don't like the guy, talking about Trump, but I'm going to vote against him being impeached because I don't like the fact that we are using partisan politics to set a precedent that we can remove a president just because we don't agree with his point of view.
No, because essentially, like, if Democrats got what they wanted on this, then essentially, if a party controlled both the House and the Senate, they could have essentially have free reign to impeach a president, like, if they wanted, like, regardless of, like, if the president's, like, democratically elected, And I think that it really just, what it really does is it undermines the will of the American people,
I agree.
That's what I would say.
I mean, but in other countries, you have parliamentary systems where when that does happen, the executive just changes parties.
I'm unfamiliar with this.
Well, doesn't the parliament elect the executive like in
in UK
in parliamentary systems? So I mean, I don't think it's the worst thing. I don't think it's what we should use.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that it's not as though this is
I know what you're talking about.
It's unprecedented in the world that we would have some sort of authoritarian system if that did become the norm. But I still don't want to see it happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess you're right on that, but I just I don't know. I don't think you necessarily want that for America.
No,
I agree.
If,
like
that's not the system that we have.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of like the parliamentary system they have in the UK, where essentially, because I don't know, I think you should directly elect your representatives. But yeah, I mean. This is nothing new. We all know like impeachment is essentially just a partisan. It's just a partisan show. It's all, and eventually it's gonna amount to nothing. Like.
Oh, I agree.
Like
the trial in the Senate is gonna go nowhere. If the Republicans decide to remove him from office. I mean, they've just totally shot themselves in the foot for 2020. Like,
yeah, and then you just get Mike Pence as president. You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if let's say hypothetically Trump was removed from office. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets elected in 2020.
Well, you can't. I don't think you can.
Yeah, you can.
You can run if you get removed.
You can. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Okay, but anyways. Moving on.
Well, he'd have to be pardoned, but the precedent is.
Well, no, he wouldn't have to be pardoned because he's not convicted of any crimes. They're not accusing of any crimes. There's no high crime. Like I said, there's no high crimes or misdemeanors. So he wouldn't even have to be pardoned.
If that did happen, if he did get removed from office and he ran again, he would win in a much bigger way.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, but man,
I don't really, I'm not a big fan of the guy's policies.
Oh, you're not? I am.
And I'm not a big fan of the guy. Well, I can't say that. I like Trump in the same way that I like Kanye West. I think that it's really funny that he is our president right now.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious.
I think that's hilarious. I love the way that he won in 2016. I don't have a lot of respect for the man as a man.
Yeah.
I don't think
definitely has some serious character flaws.
Yeah, I don't think he has really any idea what he's doing in that office. I think he's deferred to a lot of his advisors on a lot of things. And, you know, I'm not...
Hey, 200,000 jobs is 200,000 jobs.
Sure, yeah, whatever you say. But, you know, did Trump go in there like frickin' John Maynard Keynes and, you know, come up with the economic theory that made that happen? No.
Well, I mean, no, but he did cut like a ton of... Well, yeah, he did defer.
He had no idea what he was doing.
But hey, you know, sometimes that's what you need,
He's a real estate mogul that failed many times. And
hey, here's what I'll say. I would say what you really need... You got Trump. Trump is essentially like, you know, you need like a big, like, I guess, blusterous, you know, like figurehead to stand up to all these like political powerhouses on the global stage, you know, like Merkel and Netanyahu and Putin and
what I like about Trump is that he is a media mastermind and that he knows how to display himself always, and I just every time every time I see the man, it's hilarious. He's just nothing that we've ever seen before in that office, and it's always interesting, you know. Yeah,
I would say it's less if he knows how to display himself. It's more of, I guess, like the media, or I guess the elitist, I don't know how to describe it, like the elitist left-wing bubble is so out of touch with the everyday American that they can't help but portray him in a favorable way, you know?
I mean, he's just, for lack of a better term, he's a meme lord.
He's a force of nature,
he is, yeah, seriously. It's like...
Yeah, Donald Trump, meme of the decade.
It's like, I don't understand it at all, but it's like when you drive past a really bad car accident. You really wish that it didn't happen, but you can't stop staring at it.
I think it's more of essentially people like saying like fuck you to the establishment.
No, I totally agree.
Like Trump is just a giant middle finger waving at the establishment.
Yeah,
like,
and he goes in there and says fuck you. And
yeah,
you know, I mean, it's...
No, yeah, he does. And like, yeah, it's like and like I said, I mean, I think his policies are pretty good. Yeah, you're right. It is probably a lot of like other people, like his advisors, telling him what to do. But I mean, still, like the man really pisses off the right people. You know, that's what I like about him.
And I'm a fan of the fact that there's been a lot of drum beating for war with Iran, and the fact that we haven't, like when John Bolton was his, I want to say either national security advisor. Was it national security advisor? Yeah. Thanks, Donnie. When John Bolton was his national security advisor, I really thought that we were going to war, because that dude has been beating that drum for like decades now.
Yeah.
And when he fired him, you know, that was a big way to go, buddy. And after they downed the plane. And you know, I don't support the Iranian regime at all. I'm not a fan.
Do you want to get into like what's going on in Iran a bit?
Yeah, sure. But I just want to, before we start this, I just want to say I'm not a fan of the Iranians.
Yeah.
Just as I am a fan of the Iranian people. I think people are pretty much the same everywhere. They want to eke out a meaningful existence, have families, get educated. You know, most people are good. I'm not a fan of the Ayatollah. I'm not a fan of the leadership in Iran.
Yeah.
Just as I was not a fan of Saddam, even though I wasn't really alive at that time, what I understand of that regime, it was authoritarian. He abused his own people, you know, this, that, and the other, the whole gambit. But is ISIS better? No.
No.
Is our open-air slave markets in Iraq better? No. Is virtually no access to education or healthcare better? No.
Are you saying that? Because I would say that I don't think Iranian like interests in Iraq are good.
No. What I'm saying is that Saddam was bad for Iraq, just as the Islamic Republic is bad for Iran. But a power vacuum would be so much worse for those people.
Yeah. Well, here's what I would say. I would say that, and I was not necessarily a fan of the Iraq War, but I would say that Iraq was better off when there were like after of course like the Saddam regime had kind of been overthrown. I would say Iraq was better off, kind of with the U.S. helping them out there.
Yeah, no, when we were involved there,
and I would say Obama might have jumped the gun a bit, like just pulling troops out like that.
Well, the thing is, can't. What we should have done in Iraq, and it's easy to say this now because it's so far after the pullout, but what we should have done should have been very similar to what we did in Europe post World War II. We should have built that economy. We should have brought American companies in and built the market out, and we didn't. We just tried to maintain stability there, and then when we figured it was stable enough, we pulled out. And that is where the main issue came from. What we focused on were military objectives when what we should have focused on were economic and social objectives, like what we did with the Marshall Plan in Europe post-World War II. We focused on the economies, and we focused on the political and social realm there, and tried to combat communism. Just, it would work in the same way, combating, radical Islamist ideology.
Yeah, I would just like to kind of like outline some of this stuff, because I think there is, I guess, a lot of misinformation about what's going on in Iran, or just in the Middle East. There's like a lot of stuff. There's a lot of nuance, I guess, people don't necessarily open up to. So essentially, when people say Iran is the number one state sponsor of terrorism, they're not talking about like terror against the West. They're talking about terror. They're talking about essentially terror attacks against Sunni Muslims. And what people might not understand is essentially there are two major Islamic factions. There's the Shia Muslims and the Sunni Muslims. And they kind of hate each other a lot. And what you see essentially is in countries where there is like a Shia government in place, where there's like a Shia majority, Sunni Muslims get persecuted. I think...
Well, and the same for in countries where there's a Sunni government and...
Yeah. Like, for example, like ISIS was a Sunni organization.
Yeah, but ISIS was killing Sunnis, too.
Yeah. But
they killed everybody. I mean, they would just take you out and chop your head off if they didn't like you, if you looked at them the wrong way.
Yeah, but so what I'm saying is this isn't just like it isn't just an issue of like Americans protecting ourselves. There is essentially like kind of a humanitarian crisis going on there. Like there were like when that guy
well, if I could just interject here. If we're going to talk about Iran as a humanitarian crisis in the form of sponsoring terrorism across the globe, let's talk about Saudi Arabia as a humanitarian crisis in the form of sponsoring terrorism across the globe.
We'll get to that, but I just want to talk about essentially Soleimani and the Iranian like militia group he led. What they would essentially do is they would essentially go to Iraqi villages, accuse Sunni Muslims of being members of ISIS, and then just kill them. Like this guy wasn't like
Well, the Saudis literally gave money to ISIS and arms and material.
Yeah.
So that was a proxy war. What was going on with ISIS, in my opinion, between Iran and Saudi Arabia in the Middle East. And
I never thought about it like that, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it just. The only reason why we focus on what the Iranians did is because Saudi Arabia, next to Israel, is one of our strongest allies, not just in the Middle East, but in the globe.
Well, I would say Iraq is probably I would say Iraq was probably on track to being a great ally in the Middle East.
Yeah, before we pulled out,
yeah.
Sure. And like I said, what we should have done was focus more on economic, social, and political objectives there than just military. That, stability comes from people having jobs, there being a strong government. It doesn't come from you sitting there with a boot on your neck. If you need guns to create stability, then there is no stability. We don't need in the United States somebody on every corner with an automatic weapon. But, when you're in Mexico, for example,
yeah.
and you go to a nice area, it's like you're living on a military base, because that's what you need, because there is no stability from the economy or socially speaking or anything like that. Stability, like I said, comes from things like jobs, education, healthcare, etc.
Okay, here's a question. Policy-wise, what would you, if you were like the leader of the U.S., what would you do in the Middle East?
Well, a lot of people say pull out, and I don't think that's a good idea.
Well, I think there are good reasons to pull out, But
I think, at this point, you break it, you buy it.
Yeah.
We bought it. We broke it a long time ago, and we bought it.
I would say the Soviets had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, but we bought about 7 countries.
But I mean, yeah, we did arm like the Mujahideen, and the Taliban, and probably Al Qaeda,
and toppled governments in Libya and Iraq, and are actively trying to topple the government in Syria. And then let's talk about
Syria. Oh man,
let's talk about the Somali problem. Let's talk about the Sudanese
problem.
Okay. Well, Yemen is blockaded right now. People are starving to death. You made
your point, man. Let's.
So what I would probably do is create some sort of economic incentive to go over there and make jobs, and I think that would do nothing but benefit United States companies, especially energy companies.
Yeah.
I also think there needs to be some incentive to develop healthcare and infrastructure over there. I just don't think you can do any of that without a strong military presence.
Yeah, I think you're right, unfortunately.
And I don't mean a strong military presence in the form of air bases like what we have now. What you need are boots on the ground, like people. You need what we had during the Iraq and Afghanistan war at their heights. Like you need people who know the individuals in these villages, in these towns, and that recognize people who are problems and that can deal with this on a personal level instead
100%.
of we have a file on this guy and we think he is a threat. Let's bomb him at a wedding party and kill 40 of his family.
Oh yeah,
because that's where you make more problems.
No, I'm a big believer that essentially like the core of solving like a lot of social problems is just person to person.
I agree. I 100% agree with that. And like I cannot stress this enough. What you have in the Middle East and really all over the planet, anywhere where there are issues like this, Central America, Africa, what have you, is a lack of opportunity and a lack of stability from things like jobs, healthcare, education, etc. Because people want to do well, in my opinion. I'm not a subscriber to Hobbes at all. I'm very Lockean. I think that people ultimately want to do good.
I would agree, yeah.
And that if you give them the opportunity to do good, they will work as hard as they can in order to do good. I think what you end up seeing in these situations where you see people do things like sell others into slavery, behead people in the middle of towns, is when you back someone into a corner. When they act like an animal would when you put them in a position where they have nothing to do but fight.
I guess, but I mean at the same time, I think there are going to be I guess problematic people.
No, I disagree with that. I think, yes, you're right. There is a small percentage that is just, going to look for a way to, wreak havoc, cause chaos. But I think it's just that. I think it's a small percentage.
Well, I think what you can say is when your stability is added, that percentage will go down.
Oh, 100%.
But I do think, I think the people beheading people for ISIS would just be serial killers in a I guess we'll call it like a civilized society,
No, I agree. But like I said, it's not as though 1 in every 2 people are serial killers in the United States. It to me is a very small minority of people. The reason why you have such a widespread problem with this, in my opinion, in those areas of the world, because you have no opportunity whatsoever. That these people act as an animal would when they're backed into a corner. They do what they need to do to survive.
Well, I mean, I think it's more than just opportunity. I think the reason why a lot of people go fight for ISIS is more than opportunity, it gives them, I guess, like a sense of meaning and direction in their life, you know? I don't know. But, yeah, I would say, definitely, if you want stability, you have to have some kind of person-to-person. If you want to solve social problems, you can't look at it from, like, the big picture. You have to handle it on, like, an individual-to-individual basis,
and
you know?
I also think that a big issue in that part of the world right now has to do with just American geostrategic interests in general. And I don't mean that in the sense of, oh, we went to Iraq because they have oil. It's more of, so there was a
well, I mean, I
report.
think there are people with an interest in, like, the U.S. being at war.
Yeah, sure. But there was a report issued by the Rand Corporation prior to the fall of the Soviet Union where they basically said, you know, what is the next geostrategic objective of the United States now that communism has fallen? And the one thing that they recognized as what would be the most important thing to secure in order to retain hegemony in the way that we have was energy globally.
Yeah.
That we need to be not necessarily those who are producing the most energy or who are producing the most energy internationally. We need to be those who are responsible for protecting energy interests. And I think that is what we have done since the fall of the Soviet Union. We've made everything about, you know, how are we going to protect coal interests? How are we going to protect natural gas? How are we going to protect oil, what have you?
Yeah, I mean, so you're saying the reason why the U.S. is going to war is because of U.S. energy interests?
Yeah, in a nutshell, yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm not going to go as far as to say that, like,
but not in the way that most say, and you know, oh, you're going to make a bunch of money selling all that oil that you get from Iraq. It's more of, so to use an example, Libya was doing a lot in terms of trying to create. So they had one of the world's largest hydroelectric dams at the time when Gaddafi was ousted. And one of the first things that happened when Gaddafi was ousted and the government fell is the dam went into disrepair and stopped being operated. And, you know, that, because that type of dependence on that type of energy would have directly threatened what, you know, United States energy interests are globally. You know, they want they want it to be a commodity that can be traded and traveled with, whereas something of that nature, you know, it's concrete, it's in one space, it works for a certain geographic area, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not saying that's the only reason why Gaddafi was toppled, but what I'm saying is that it was an added benefit of that situation.
Well, I'm being honest, I think a lot of the stuff you're saying is going a bit over my head right now. But real quick,
well, okay, just to put a pin on that, ultimately a very large reason, arguably the overwhelming reason why Hitler lost World War II is because he ran out of oil. That's why he was pushing to the Caucasus and Russia, because he needed to secure the oil fields. You know, people learn from others' mistakes in history, and I think that we learned from their mistakes in World War II, and that we learned from our own mistakes.
So you're saying
with the Japanese.
So you're saying it was less about the United States essentially like being, oh, we gotta control the oil, and more like, if we want to survive as a country, we need.
If we want to survive as a country in our geostrategic footing, as you know, the hegemon, the world police, whatever you want to call it, we need to be the ones protecting the world's energy interests.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, real quick before we move off the whole Iran topic, just because we got into this, what's your opinion on Trump killing Soleimani?
Frankly, I don't really care.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think he's a good guy.
He definitely wasn't.
But I don't think, you know, I think a lot of the people that are in positions of power all over the world are not good people. I mean, Obama's got a lot of blood on his hands. Trump has a lot of blood on his hands.
That's the first point I would bring up. If you went on Twitter or whatever, like right after this happened or like it was announced, you had all these people essentially saying, "Oh, Donald Trump is he's like a war criminal or whatever." First of all, Donald Trump had congressional authorization to do what he did. Second of all these people complaining about Trump, where were they when Obama was blowing up kids carrying water because he said they were like military age and therefore enemy combatants? You know?
Dropped more bombs than FDR did in World War II. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean...
Even though FDR was president for 3 terms,
Yeah, so I mean, it seems like...
It
seems like, you know... the U.S. wanted to put up like some kind of like a strong face, you know, because I would say what you have here is really a battle of egos, you know, where essentially like the U.S. doesn't want to seem like, you know, the U.S. wants to seem like, you know, they're the ones in charge here. Like they're not going to take shit from Iran, but at the same time, Iran doesn't want to be seen as like the U.S.'s bitch, you know.
Well, I mean, they very literally are.
I know they very literally are, but I would say
really, truly, any country in the world is except for China.
Yeah.
I mean, but even in regards to China,
I would say I mean, if the U.S. stops trading with China, like China's gonna.
Well, even in regards to China, like.
You mean like military-wise?
Yeah, with NATO and CETO, I mean, they have literally no chance whatsoever. I mean, we're talking about almost half the globe.
No, I mean, and let's be honest. Like you call it NATO, it's the U.S. military.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that defense pact partnered with CETO, which is like South Korea, Philippines, Australia, Japan. I'm missing a couple, but a ton of countries in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, there'd be no chance. And ultimately, what all of that comes down to, I would argue, is the energy independence that we have internationally.
Yeah.
China would run out of the material to wage war within a year or two, and you know we have the global coalition in order to, you know, have a protracted conflict like that.
Yeah. So.
Unless, you know, we just went nuclear right off the bat and everybody fucking died.
Speaking of being America's bitch, Bernie Sanders is a fucking bitch. And, I mean, we've kind of... I like to think we've given Bernie his fair shake. Like, I don't think the guy's necessarily a liar. But I think if you think Bernie Sanders has any integrity at this point,
totally
what are you doing?
Totally agree with you. I liked the ideas in 2016. But then when he folded... to Hillary,
the guy like collapsed. Like, yeah, he keeps folding. Exactly.
Yeah, he has no backbone. And I've said this because I have a lot of left leaning friends. I'm, you know, fairly left leaning, center left.
No, but I would say,
and I would have voted for Bernie in 2016. But if he were to get into that office, it would be Jimmy Carter all over again. And
like he wouldn't be able to stand up to any of these people. Like he would fold faster than like a
deck of, like a house of cards. It would just be it'd be ridiculous. And
he'd collapse like a folding chair.
People would walk all over us, all over the globe. It wouldn't be a good situation.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, man, I would say even in 2016, Bernie was a little bitch. I would say like
I don't think you really could make that argument until after the Democratic convention.
Well, even before the Democratic convention, you had it was like a Sanders campaign rally, and you had these essentially like these Black Lives Matter activists come up, and Bernie Sanders literally just handed the mic to them and stepped back. And Bernie Sanders, he used to essentially not buy into identity politics, but in like one of the first like debates of the Democrat debates 2016 of the 2016 election. I don't know if it was in 2016. He said white people don't know what it's like to be poor, and like
he said white people don't know what it's like to be poor.
Yeah, Donnie, pull it up.
That's funny.
But while Donnie's pulling this up, like you can I am past believing that Bernie Sanders is not an establishment candidate. Because if he's not an establishment candidate, then he's literally fucking bending over and spreading his ass cheeks for the establishment, you know? Like, time and time again. Whether it was, like, he endorsed Hillary. Hillary literally came out like earlier, like I think it was like earlier in the week, and essentially said, if Bernie Sanders is nomination, I will not be endorsing Bernie. You know. Yeah, see, what does that say? Read it, Jeff.
When you're white, you don't know what it's like to be living in a ghetto. You don't know what it's like to be poor. You don't know what it's like to be hassled when you walk down the street or you get dragged out of a car.
Yeah, see, bullshit. Complete identity politics bullshit. Yeah. Bernie Sanders is, and like I said, if you're going to claim Bernie Sanders isn't an establishment candidate, then... Look, the man's either an establishment candidate or he is like the weakest, most simpering little asshole ever, you know?
Well, Bernie to me is very much like an embodiment of his time. Bernie very much embodies the Martin Luther King.
I don't know, man.
I'm not saying that
Martin Luther King had like integrity and a fucking backbone.
Well.
Well, what?
Let's not go that far.
No, what are you talking about? He definitely did.
I think that the man did a lot for the civil rights movement. I'm not going to discount that. But, you know, he was known for cheating on his wife consistently. You know, his whole political like strategy was like the Jesus strategy of turning the other cheek. And, you know,
no, it wasn't just that. Martin Luther King, he preached essentially that it wasn't an us versus them thing. This was like a thing for humanity.
Right.
And look, man,
and I agree with that.
Look, I have mad respect for Martin Luther King. Let's not be ragging on Martin Luther King
I'm not
2 days after MLK Day, man.
I forgot that was like 2 days ago. I'm not ragging on him. What I'm saying is that you can draw a lot of similarities between Bernie's strategy and his strategy.
I would say you could draw a lot of similarities between Bernie Sanders and Neville Chamberlain. I would say that if Bernie Sanders was alive during World War II, he would be the one saying, "Oh yeah, that's fine if Germany wants to, put troops in the Rhineland. You know, that's like that would be him.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like a little kid who's, I don't even know, bro. I
prefer the Malcolm X strategy over the MLK strategy.
I disagree 100% for MLK strategy.
MLK strategy was please give me rights, and Malcolm X strategy was I'm taking my rights.
Well, no. Well, I mean, I would say Malcolm X was very, like I said, it was a very us versus them thing. It was a very. No, I wouldn't say it. I would say no. It's not. There's no such thing as us versus them. Everything is individual to individual.
I disagree.
Well,
I totally disagree.
I guess we'll have to get into that later. But anyways, back to the topic at hand. Like I said, when Bernie's supporters accused Joe Biden was corrupt, Bernie apologized to Joe Biden on behalf of his supporters. When essentially Bernie Sanders supporters were saying, "Oh, there's something a little bit fishy going on with this war and stuff," like Bernie Sanders literally called it a Trump conspiracy theory. Like the man. And, oh my God! Did you see those Project Veritas videos on Bernie Sanders staffers?
No.
Essentially talking about how if Bernie gets elected, they want to essentially do to Republicans what's happening to the Uyghur Muslims in China.
What?
Dude, Veritas, they essentially secretly recorded Bernie Sanders campaign staffers saying, essentially. If Bernie gets elected, let's put Republicans in re-education camps. And Bernie has not come out and addressed this at all. He just pretends like it doesn't happen. Like I said, hey, if you were someone maybe in maybe 2014 who was a feel the burn guy, yeah, but at this point, I don't know how you can support this guy. This guy, okay, I'm getting way too heated here. Do you want to chime in?
Yeah,
before I embarrass myself.
Like I said, I think that the dude has very little backbone. I think it's very much of an asking mentality with him. The one thing that I do like about Trump is that he's going to do whatever he wants to do, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And that is something that we need in that office.
Like I said,
arguably,
you need a powerhouse to compete with the other political powerhouses.
Arguably, that's been pretty much every president we've had except for a handful, like Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
And Obama was the same way. I mean, he
was.
He
like,
would get
for all
the
his
things.
Faults, yeah.
He would get the things that he wanted done.
Except when it came to that Iran nuclear deal, but
he did get it signed though.
But I mean, some would say maybe he just implemented that to screw over the next administration.
But what I'm saying here is that if he got into office, it would be completely ineffectual. Nothing would happen. It would be...
Well, I would say worst case scenario, they implement all those terrible socialist policies.
None of that will happen. Congress and the Senate would never allow that to happen.
Okay.
Just because of the amount of money influencing them. It just wouldn't happen.
Well, look, I mean, okay. Well, let's move on to a candidate that actually has a backbone. Did you hear about this Tulsi Gabbard is suing Hillary Clinton?
God, I love Tulsi so much.
Well... I mean, she has said some things in the past disagree with. I don't think it was necessarily like she blamed that. I don't know. She's essentially called Trump a war criminal. Not necessarily.
Every president since FDR, well, even before, was pretty much a war criminal.
I would say Tulsi has a bit of TDS. Apart from that, I would say she
Trump derangement syndrome. Tulsi, the one that voted against his impeachment, really? You think she has TDS? I totally disagree with that.
Okay, we're gonna have to.
She didn't vote against the impeachment.
She abstained.
She abstained. Yeah. Thanks, Donnie. No, but anyways, I just but yeah, I think out of all the candidates there, she does have a ton of integrity. Maybe I don't know. Maybe Yang has a bit of integrity, but like. I don't like. Like I said,
me, Yang is a joke.
Bernie's a coward.
I like his policies, but.
I think that if you got him on a debate stage and actually let him talk, like had like an actual debate, not one of these like panel sessions they call a debate.
Oh yeah, you would actually talk about things with substance.
I think he would go far.
Instead of identity politics the whole time. Yeah, I agree.
But I'm not a huge fan. Like, look, I understand the argument for universal basic income. If we were to essentially eliminate Social Security, it would be cheaper to give American $1,000 a month. That's a decent argument. I would say he definitely does bring up certain issues, such as like issues with like automation, and jobs. But overall,
the economy is changing a lot, and will continue to change a lot, and it will get a lot faster.
Yeah, but I don't think I'd ever vote for the guy. I wouldn't vote for Yang over Trump. I wouldn't vote for Tulsi over Trump.
I would. I'm not going to vote for Trump, and I'm not going to vote for Biden.
Well, let's see if I can change that in time for the election.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, I just I think
Kanye's not running.
I wouldn't vote for Kanye either.
I would vote for Kanye.
If Kim ran, I'd vote for Kim.
I would not vote for Kim.
Just
what are you talking about?
Just for the memes of it.
You vote for Kim for the memes, but not for Kanye?
No.
Okay. Well, anyways.
And I love Kanye.
I think if Trump was smart, what he would do is he would essentially make make Tulsi like Secretary of Defense or something like that. I think.
Yeah, that won't happen.
I know, but look,
cold day in hell if that ever.
Well,
happens.
I know, but listen, like I like Trump has praised Tulsi in the past, even
maybe
if
like
Tulsi
Secretary of Housing.
Even if Tulsi, isn't that what Ben Carson? No,
no, I think he's Surgeon General.
Whatever. But anyways,
Ben Carson.
Health and Human Services.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Downey. But anyways, I would say, I think Gabbard would be good Gabbard would be good as maybe Secretary of Defense or Secretary of State. I don't think Gabbard would be a good president. Like I said, I don't like her policy on nuclear energy. I don't like her economic policy.
I think Gabbard would be great in either of those fields.
Yeah, but anyways,
I think she'd be really great as state over defense. Honestly,
that's enough ragging on Tulsi. I got some praise for Tulsi. She's suing Hillary Clinton over the essentially Russian asset comments as defamation.
Good. I'm honestly sick of this return to McCarthyism. I think that it's one of the grossest.
Man, I never thought of that, but yeah, the Russian asset is really
literally McCarthyism 2.0. It's.
No, because you could. It's literally because
there's no difference between what happened in the 1950s and what's happening right now.
They were calling people Soviet assets, you know,
and now they're saying Russian assets. Yep.
Yeah, man. I just no, you're I didn't even think about it that way. It's literally
McCarthyism.
Yeah, literally, yeah. So
The only difference is they're not like totally ruining people's careers. You know, you can.
They're trying to,
but you can. A lot of people see through it now.
No, but so essentially, what Tulsi is suing Clinton for are, she's essentially saying that Clinton's comments cost her, like support and donations, amounting to $50 million. Plus, she's going to seek punitive damages, which I would say probably warranted. And there are people essentially saying, "Oh, Clinton never mentioned like Tulsi by name." You know, there is precedent in defamation lawsuits that you don't actually have to mention the person by name in order for defamation. Like as long as you like allude to it, you know, like.
Well, I mean, I'm not positive on this.
No.
Hillary added her on Twitter and said things about her in regards to the Russian thing.
I don't know how
I don't know how you could construe. Well, they had a Twitter fight. That's when this all started.
You had the Clinton spokesperson essentially saying, when asked about Tulsi, they essentially said, "Well, if like the Russian nesting doll fits, you know, like blatantly." And this isn't like a statement of opinion or anything like that. This is blatantly
I'm sure that a U.S. Army major is definitely working for the Russian government.
Well, not just U.S. Army major that's on all these like intelligence committees and stuff like that. You know?
No, definitely working for the Russian government.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous, and they like I said, like I think apart from like Hillary saying that, all these news organizations just like took it and ran, you know. Like as a story, and like was Tulsi going to win the nomination if Hillary Clinton hadn't said this? No, of course not.
No, probably not.
But is it a statement of fact? Is it a defamatory? Is it like a defamatory statement of fact? Did it cost Tulsi probably some support among Democrats? And I don't know what's going on. There has been this bizarre push among Democrats to essentially demonize Tulsi, you know, and I don't really get why.
Well, I think that. If you're going to have someone who's going to be successful as a Democrat going forward, you're going to want to look for someone more like Tulsi than anyone else that's 100%.
But the thing is, the Democrat establishment doesn't like people like that.
Yeah, exactly. If she were projected, she would identify with more voters than I think any of the candidates up there.
Yeah, I think if you did like a weighted ballot where essentially people chose their like first, second, and third choice, Tulsi would win.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, anyways,
I disagree with that. I think right now that wouldn't be the case. But like I said, if she was given a fair shake, if she got the media time and
like even if Google didn't screw her over on her ad, you know, yeah. So, but I would say what this really goes back to is Tulsi was like the vice chair of like the DNC, and when all that stuff happened, where they essentially screwed over Bernie Sanders. Tulsi had the integrity to essentially, like, I think Tulsi was essentially being set up for a prominent position in the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
But when essentially all this stuff came out, Tulsi stepped down. She had the integrity to step down and endorse Bernie over Hillary. And I think that Hillary is still super salty about that. I think the Democrats in general are still super salty about that, you know? I don't know. It just, man, and like Tulsi is not going to win the nomination for this election, but you know, I would say somewhere down the line, you know, maybe like the Democratic Party like actually like looks at itself critically for a bit, you know, goes through maybe like some reform. Maybe they stop like maybe if they put the interests of like Democratic voters above the interests of like
the party.
Yeah, exactly. And like Tulsi's even said, like I will put the interests of voters above the interests of a party. I think like that's what people really want, you know? Because like I don't know, it just all this stuff like pisses me off, you know. And I would say honestly, between you and me, I don't think this lawsuit's going to go anywhere with Tulsi and Clinton.
So either.
Nobody goes after Clinton, and I hope Tulsi essentially, I don't know, hires some bodyguards
so she
doesn't wind up having committed
suicide
by shooting herself twice in the back of the head.
Falling down a flight of stairs, having a heart attack, hanging herself all at the same time.
Exactly. I don't know. So, but like, I mean, of course, like the Clintons aren't gonna assassinate Tulsi.
Oh, of course not. Yeah, they've never done that before.
No, and by the way, I just want everyone to know that I would never kill myself.
I'm
absolutely happy. I'm content.
I am very happy. I would never do anything to myself.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on that happy note,
if I kill myself, please investigate my death.
Yeah. Well, on that happy note, we're about out of time. Unless you have anything else to say, Jeff.
Other than the fact that I do not have any plans to commit suicide.
I do not. I repeat, I do not have any information that could lead to the arrest of Hillary Clinton. Good night, everybody. Stay safe.